So you guys, this is the last midweek fellowship of the season, and it's just been really wonderful being with you all. So like family reunion once a week, or one of those family gathering nights that we get to be together. So thoroughly enjoying it. We made it over halfway through the book of Genesis, and so right now my goal is just the vision is that next year we would do a similar thing and finish out the book. Of course the Lord could switch that up, or he's welcome to change it as he leads, but we made it halfway through, and the idea would be next year we'd finish the whole book of Genesis, the second half. So we'll see what the Lord does, but just enjoyed going through Genesis and teaching it to you and covering new ground for me. A lot of this I've never taught before, and so it's been a big learning experience for me, and I've really been enjoying it. So we're in Genesis 28. Just go through 22 verses tonight. It should be a little simpler. Chris, did you need something from me? You were doing a cool signals down here. Okay, cool. I didn't know if you're like, do you need water, Rory? I'm like, well, that's nice of you to ask from clear up there. I feel a little splash in there. I think we're good. So just the last few weeks, we've looked at Isaac's life. Of course, over the course of the last number of months, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Oh, you're so sweet, Ken. That wasn't a hint, but Abraham, and then the fulfillment of the promise that he would have a child with Sarah, and they had that fulfilled child, Isaac. And then we've studied Isaac's life the last few weeks, and then Chris led us towards the end of Isaac's life. We'll see the end of his life here in the weeks, the studies to come. But now we have been studying the next generation with Jacob and Esau. And if you didn't get to listen to last week's study on Jacob and his tricky scheme against his brother Esau, I'd encourage you to listen to last week's. It was so powerful and so convicting as a dad and as a parent, and it's just kind of been lingering in my heart this last week. But because of Jacob's deceitful plot against his brother to steal his brother's blessing, we're going to see Jacob today on the run, running for his life, heading some 500 miles away, partly running for his life, partly to go get a wife, and to get a wife from, I was just sitting at my desk today thinking just like, this is so bizarre and not how we do things, but when you really want a good wife, you travel 500 miles to find a cousin. That's how they did things in the book of Genesis. I'm like, there's no ladies around the local area, apparently. But the great conviction was that they wouldn't be marrying out of the pagan population around them. And we're going to see in just a second, brother Esau would do that, and it would cause a major problem. And of course, the cousin that he would go find and meet, and the same thing happened with a bride for Isaac, his dad. We're talking distant relatives, right? Distant relatives, to say the least. So he's running for his life because of the plot against his bigger, stronger, probably more masculine brother, And in the flight from his home, Jacob is going to leave everything behind. His dwelling, his possessions, his birth family, and his friends. We're going to see him totally alone. It doesn't seem like he has anybody with him. No servants, nothing. Now, when his father had a wife picked out in the same area, 500 miles away, a servant went in the search. A servant went with servants and 10 camels and a great entourage and lots of wealth. And it doesn't seem that Jacob's traveling with anything but the labor that he can bring to work for a wife where he's going. So It's interesting, though, to see a interesting different beginning for the man who's destined to father the 12 tribes of Israel. And the events in Jacob's life that we're going to read in the studies to come, going into the next season of this, there's an unexpected turn through this dream that he's going to have today, where he's going to learn that the blessings of God are for him as well, even in his kind of deceitful patterns of living. God's still merciful and gracious to him. So last week, in chapter 27, the final 5 verses in verse 41, we see that Esau, the older brother, hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, "The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I'll kill my brother Jacob." There was murder in Esau's heart towards the little brother. And the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Surely your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you by intending to kill you." So there's some major dysfunction going on in this home. It's a bit of a Jerry Springer episode going on in the house of Abraham, in the patriarchs. "Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, arise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days until your brother's fury turns away." Just a few days, the 500-mile journey, however long that's going to take, and then the few days and then the 500 miles back. So, más o menos 3 años, a good number of days, right? But until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you've done to him, then I'll send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved also of you both in one day? And Rebekah said to Isaac, "I'm weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth." So quick topic change. It was, go and save your life, run for your life, and might as well go pick out a wife while you're running for your life, right? And then quick topic change. By the way, I really hate my daughters-in-law. Both are bad. One son's trying to kill the other. Also, my daughter-in-laws are a major issue, a thorn in my flesh, right? She said, "I'm weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife of the daughters of Heth like these, who are the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me?" So Rebekah here just admits that things have gotten so bad with these two brides that she's sick of her own life because of them. And I'm trying to remember the exact phrase from a couple chapters ago. I'm over here in Numbers. But it said it another place, wrapping up a couple weeks ago, that it kind of just adds to that. They were a thorn in her flesh. The end of chapter. Yeah, it was back in chapter 26, 34. When Esau was 40 years old, he took as wives Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. And they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. So we just learned a couple weeks ago just the importance of picking out a godly spouse that you're equally yoked with, that is also something so sweet about being in good harmony with your future in-laws, and I think I've mentioned before, my in-laws are just some of my best friends in the whole world. You guys know Ken and Sue, and it's just so wonderful. My dad was not alive when I got married, but my mom is such good friends with my in-laws, and there's something so sweet in that. So word to the young, if you can at all make that happen, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But here, it's just the second time it's mentioned. There are some major issues in the relationship with her daughter-in-laws and her. And so the story goes on in our chapter tonight then, kind of continuing the Jacob needs to flee. Esau's going to try to do something to remedy the issues he's got with interesting two names, right? Wasn't it like Judith and Basemath? Like, well, she was born down in on the bath mat in the basement. What else is there? It's like, I mean, but Basemath, I met her and I could not say no. And Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said to him, you shall not don't go to Basemath's sister. Don't go over to Judith, and their friends and that clique, Don't take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Don't be unequally yoked together with a non-believer. Isaac called Jacob and he blessed him. And this is interesting because there had already been a blessing. Isaac had blessed Jacob, but in deception, like with the whole thing that Chris taught on last week, like full on gotta get dressed up like Esau and smell like Esau. I gotta smell like the wilderness. I gotta put goat's hair all over my body, so that when dad's, touching me, he's feeling my older brother, who Chris made the great joke, like, how hairy was this guy, and just, I got to make it happen. I got to look just like Esau to my blind dad. I got to smell like him, all of those things. And Jacob blessed him, and you'll remember that when Esau found out about it, he's like, well, Dad, can't you bless me also? Don't you have a blessing in the reserve tank? And Isaac's like, nope, I'm all out. I'm old and I'm out of blessings, I don't have the reserve tank. I got nothing left until it's time for Jacob to leave. Found another one. Esau's like, for real? All of a sudden he's got another blessing, right? And so he calls Jacob, but this time it's just for you, because of you. Because you're my son, Jacob. Not because I was tricked or duped or anything like that. It's apart from deceit. It's apart from malice. I'm just going to bless you. And so in the blessing, he charged Jacob, or commanded him, or instructed and directed him not to take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. So you shall not marry a Canaanite girl. So where should you go on this great road trip to Padan Aram, verse 2, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take yourself a wife from there of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. So we're introduced back in chapter 25, verse 20, to Rebekah's family from Padan Aram, and we were introduced to Bethuel. That's Jacob's grandpa Bethuel. And Uncle Laban is going to play a big character in the stories to come when we continue on through Genesis next fall or so. And so just kind of getting some names that are going to be familiar in the character list of Genesis. But he needed to go to the relatives and get a wife from there. And then the blessing continues in verse 3. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may be an assembly of peoples. So here's this word for God, a name for God, God Almighty. It's the second time in Genesis that we've seen this name. It's the name that Amy Grant made her millions on. El Shaddai. Remember El Shaddai? Have you ever listened to Amy Grant? Bunch of blank faces out there. Were you not a Christian in the 80s? El Shaddai, El Shaddai, bunch of foreign words I don't know. Age to age, you're still the same. By the power. Okay. So El Shaddai, right? It's God Almighty. God Almighty. Oh, may He bless you, and then work just the blessings that have been passed from Grandpa Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, this blessing that was one of fruitfulness and multiplication, The blessings to the patriarchs always had this line of size growth and multiplication, because that was the prophecy over the family. And so when they'd bless each other, it was a blessing with the flavor of the prophecy. We know that this is what God has for our family, and so may God bless you and multiply you, making you fruitful. But one of the unique phrases that Isaac has for Jacob that we haven't seen before, we've always seen, and we'll see it again today, as numerous as the stars in the sky or the sand on the seashore. And they're like, what's a seashore? Or here it's, though, that you may be an assembly of peoples. So that's an addition to this numerical blessing, that you'd be an assembly of peoples, or maybe your translation says, if you're ESV, a company of peoples. And I like what Derek Kidner said about this. He said, in the word company, from the root to assemble, the Old Testament term for the church or the congregation makes its first appearance, bringing with it the idea of coherence as well as multiplicity. I always loved in high school and middle school when it was a day of assembly, right? Because it broke you out of your normal, boring routine of class, and y'all got to come together in the gym and have great activities and be together and have a motivational speaker and all that good stuff. Although I heard today from my daughter it was assembly day, and that nowadays high schoolers don't really look forward to it as much as we did. But, they don't know what they're missing. And so the assembly, or the gathering together, that's what the New Testament word ecclesia, or church, is. It's gathering together. And I keep saying it's Paul when we know that we don't know who wrote Hebrews, but the writer of Hebrews said, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together, as is the manner of some. Some people do forsake it, but rather you need to press into it all the more as you see the day approaching. And so praise the Lord for you guys. You're here tonight, and we're part of the regular assembling of the church. And it just breaks my heart, as it breaks the Lord's heart, when people are negligent in their assembling together with the church. And I always like to draw the picture of assembling has that tone of putting something together. You buy that barbecue grill, over 4th of July, and it says, some assembly required on the box, and you mean all assembly required. Nothing's put together, and all you gave me is this Allen wrench. Thank you very much. But the putting of together, where every part of the grill is important, and it's the same with us as a church. It's not just showing up that's the assembly. It's the participation. It's getting plugged in and put into your place within the body of Christ that makes you part of the assembly. And the prophecy over Jacob was that through his line there would be a great assembly. And something that we've been learning all through Genesis is that's not just for Israel. Galatians tells us that it's everyone who will be adopted in through the grace of Jesus. And so here we are, a part of the assembly, getting to be a part of this prophecy right here. And I do just love what Kidner said, that it brings with it the idea of coherence as well as multiplicity. So I think we see that on like a Wednesday night like this, where we don't just all show up and leave, but we come and we bring and we share our different, we had a banana split pie out there tonight that I set aside on the microwave out there, so nobody better eat it, but we got the brownies and the pies and the stews and the different drinks and no drinks, just water. The breads, and everyone's bringing something, and people come and they set up and they're operating and they're serving the kids, and then afterwards we're all going to participate, and there's fellowship and encouragement and prayer and coherence and multiplicity. But I love that that's part of the prophecy of Isaac to Jacob. Isaac was kind of knocked a couple weeks ago as just being kind of an ordinary guy in the story of Abraham's lineage. And as I was teaching it, my mind was changed on that. I was like, this guy's not ordinary at all. What a guy. And then his blessing here just has this great prophecy of the assembly of peoples that I sure appreciate. Verse 4, and you'll be an assembly of peoples, and give you the blessing of Abraham to you and your descendants with you, that you may inherit the land in which you are a stranger, which God gave to Abraham. So to us it seems so distant, so far away, and the promise of Abraham. But, this is a dad talking to his son about the promise to his grandpa. And so it's kind of just as close as the stories that you've been told around, the fireplace, or the Thanksgiving table or whatever. And just, Dad, tell me another story about Grandpa, or Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. It's just the promise that was made to your grandpa. It's for you too, son. And we love to tell the stories about my dad, and my grandparents. And my grandpa was in the 8th Air Force in World War II, and there was their most recent Band of Brothers series was made about his bomber unit in World War II, and it references his specific squadron and things like that, and so my kids are just all about the B-17 and the bravery over the skies of Europe and this and that, just telling all the stories of Grandpa and his heroism. And here it's like, and your grandpa had this promise, and he was married, they were old and they couldn't have kids, and they were still promised they were going to be having kids, and decades went by and they still didn't have any, and Grandpa, this lady named Hagar was there. We won't talk about that tonight, son, but but it wasn't through that kid. It was, the promise was, and then I came, and then your grandpa took me up on this mountain, and he was going to kill me. He was going to straight up kill me, I carried the wood for my own sacrifice up the mountain. And I was like, Dad, the fire we have and the wood we have, what are we going to do, And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. The Lord will provide himself the lamb. And it was crazy. Like, Dad had the knife way up in the air, and he had that look in his eye like, he's going to kill me. And it's like coming down. And then we heard like the voice of God, like, stop. And that dagger's like, Erch. And I heard it hit my necklace. Dink, and no. And son, he's just telling all the stories. And then after he untied me, took a lot longer than I was hoping to untie those ropes. After he untied me, we were standing there, we got the ramp, and the Lord promised right there, again, I heard it, that we would be multiplied. And so now, son, I just get to pass this on to you, but you're on your way out of here because your brother's about to kill you. And I just want you to know, he's not going to succeed because through you, you're going to have a bunch of kids, and the promise is just going to keep continuing. Like, full-on assembly of peoples. Like, in high school, kid, when you have those, no, just kidding. And so the promises of the blessings of Abraham and to your descendants with you, and time again, if you've been here this last year going through this, haven't we heard the promise like again and again and again and again, and they just pop up out of nowhere, these promises to Abraham and his family about this lineage that they're going to be having. And then the promise also that there would be a land for them. And the blessing towards Jacob is that you may inherit the land in which you're a stranger, which God gave to Abraham. So later on in Israel's story, in the Exodus account, the wilderness wanderings, it's going to keep being referenced that we're just like sojourners and wanderers as a people. And it's kind of interesting because the last number of weeks, it's not because they're like homeless, and they're like squatting out in China Hat Road or something like we've been learning about around here, or anything like that. Like, they're hard workers, they've got great business mindset, they're filthy rich. Like, the Philistine king was threatened by Isaac's wealth, they were prosperous. Money wasn't an issue, it's just that the land hadn't been conquered yet for them. That way hadn't happened, but that was all right with Abraham. The book of Hebrews tells us, like, he knew that that wasn't really the home anyways. He knew that ultimately there was a kingdom that didn't have walls and foundations made with man. So he was okay with the timing of the Lord. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a land. It's just that Abraham was okay with the timing of the Lord. And so even at this point in the story of the grandson's life, they still were kind of like strangers, but don't worry, the land, it's coming. Okay? And the psalmist says it in 39:12, all the way later on in David's life. Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry. Do not be silent at my tears, for I am a stranger with you, a sojourner, as all my fathers were. And so, he just references, like, we've always just kind of been a people of sojourners. So, verse 5, the blessing's over, and Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. And then in the next few verses, the focus is going to shift back to Esau for just a few verses. Verse 6, Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram. And he was like, I thought you were out of blessings. So you're like, what's up with another blessing here? To take himself a wife from there, and that he blessed him, gave him a charge, saying, you shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. And that Jacob obeyed his father and his mother and had gone to Padan Aram. Also Esau, you can just see that Esau is very observant. Like, good job, Esau. Like, it just says everything that it was already said. Yep, he observed it all. And that Jacob, also Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan did not please his father Isaac. So he was picking up on the tension in the room. So Esau, this is going to make it all better, you guys, don't worry. Esau, very resourceful, knows just what to do to set his mother and father's heart at ease who've been weary of life for the last few years. Don't worry, Dad and Mom, I got it covered. So Esau went to Ishmael and took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nabajoth, to be his wife in addition to the wives he had. That'll make it all better. One guy was really gave him the benefit of the doubt, like, oh, we're supposed to marry a cousin? Well then, what about from the Ishmael side of the story, And that maybe he was trying to make it a little bit better, but I think it was Kidner that said that was hardly the way back to blessing. And so if you weren't here last week, you should listen to the tail end of Chris's message, like the last 10 minutes, because he talks about what comes through Esau's line in world history and how there would always be conflict against Israel, and just the idea of trying to wipe Israel off the map through just that line that would come through there. Yeah, I think it was Bethencourt that said, this, of course, will do nothing to ease tensions between him and his parents. Now there's just a third one that's going to be causing problems, it seems. So now, verse 10, Jacob, so we're back to Jacob. Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So his journey begins, and Boyce was probably, Boyce pointed it out. I think Bethencourt touched on it. Just that it seemed like, maybe you pick up on this too, but that Jacob just went out with nothing and no one and was really up for a lonely journey and really was unprepared for such a journey. And because it wasn't as prayerful and prepared as when Abraham sent out his servant to find a bride for Isaac. Instead, it's just a rushed thing, run for your life, that it's kind of that he's very unprepared for the journey and kind of a desperate case. And that's why the Lord's going to do what he's going to do for him here soon. But just to give you an idea of the journey that's up ahead, we have a map for you. If we could throw that up on the screen. He's going to leave Beersheba in the south, and so it's really tiny, you guys, I'm sorry, but if you can see the bottom hot air balloon the blue one down there. That's Beersheba. And then Bethel, where we're going to see our story today take place, is the top of that cluster. It's the top blue bubble there. So that's Bethel is what we're going to be reading about tonight. And then, but guess where Jacob is going to be traveling to? Do you see any other hot air balloons in the picture? He is going all the way up to the end of the Mediterranean Sea and over to Mesopotamia, to the region of Haran, and Padan-Aram right there in that area. So, 500 miles. So that just looks like quite the trip for sure. But that was along a trade route that led north and would turn east over the northern edge of what was called the Great Desert of Haran. 500 miles, said Jacob had traveled about 50 miles. Maybe this was the second day of his journey when he came to this area called Bethel, or formerly known as Luz, less affectionately known as Luz, but Bethel. So let's see what happens here in Bethel. Verse 11, so he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. So I don't know if you guys ever took geology in school at all, but back then, rocks were very soft, fluffy, and cushiony. Very resembled a lot of like down, on the inside. The magma of the day. Okay. Clearly, rocks were the same then as they were now. Now, I've only done a little bit of camping in my day. And I've known since my youth that rocks do not a good pillow make. But when you've got rocks in your head, it's pretty soft, And so Jacob, for whatever, maybe the guy just needed to prop his head up a little, what? By the way, I drew you a picture tonight of our story, so whenever that pops up there. So he takes the stone out of the place, and drew that just real quick for you guys. I artistically put the white lines on the side of the picture too, just so you know. And you don't really have to walk on the ladder. It's a metaphor. The angel can float along the side of them. Okay, so, but we might say that as he goes to sleep, Jacob's between a rock and a hard place tonight. No, okay, I got to give Boyce the credit for that one. He wrote that one down. But so God's going to appear to him tonight in a dream. And he dreamed, verse 12 says, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. So we're going to see that Jacob is a dreamer, and his son Joseph is also going to have that gift of just hearing from the Lord through dreams. Something like 5 dreams or so, I think, 7 or 8 different revelations of God that Jacob would receive in his lifetime. And someone once said of this vision or dream that he has that no experience ever showed the closeness of heaven to earth or the interest of heaven in earth more vividly than Jacob's vision. So just the nearness and the interest, it kind of pops us to the beginning of Job and how the angels would be going around the earth, and then they'd go up and tell the Lord what's going on and give an account of what's going on. Hebrews tells us that there's an innumerable company of angels. The book of Revelation talks about thousands and 10,000s and thousands of thousands, or millions of angels, that are in the heavens. And so just seeing, heaven meeting earth, right? And just the angels themselves, we're told in the book of Hebrews chapter 1 that they are ministering spirits sent to minister to those who will inherit salvation. So that's one thing that angels do, is they minister to us who inherit salvation. And the Gospels tell us that little children have their own personal angel, like a guardian angel who always appear before the Father in heaven. So the concept of a guardian angel isn't just fluff, but just the heart of the Lord is that there's connection between the throne and between heaven and between earth. Now, John chapter 1, when Jesus meets Nathanael, he meets Nathanael and he says, I saw you underneath the fig tree. And Nathanael was so blown away that Jesus had seen him under the tree that he says, truly, you're the Son of God. Just that Jesus knew that he was sitting over there by himself under the fig tree. So Jesus said, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You're going to see greater things than these. And he said to him, most assuredly, I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. So Jesus just gives us an incredible commentary into what Jacob saw that night. He saw Jesus. He saw that the way to heaven, the truth and the life is Jesus. That Jesus is the door, John chapter 10 says. That you can't go around, you can't go any other way. You've got to go into the sheepfold through the door. And so it's just so great, those little things that Jesus is like, hey, I am the ladder. I'm the way to heaven. You want to go to heaven? You want to have relationship with the Creator? You want to, have hope in the next life? Then put your trust in me. And, Boyce was saying, I don't know what Jesus is referring to here. It could be the day when the Lord is coming back in his Father's glory with the angels in the Olivet Discourse when he speaks of that. And so maybe Jesus is referencing like I'm coming back with the angels. And maybe that's what he is referring to. But I like what Boyce said when he said, but the important thing in the saying is the fact that Jesus clearly applies to himself the image of the heavenly stairway. That is, when Jesus spoke of the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man, he was saying that he's the ladder. He's the bridge that came from heaven to earth, the only bridge by which it's possible for men and women to pass from earth to heaven. Kidner put it just simply, Jesus took this figure of a means of access between heaven and earth as a vivid foretaste of himself as the way. It's kind of an interesting dream that Jacob had. Apart, like by itself, I'm kind of like, weird. Like what a weird vision to have. Like, and there I was sleeping after, there's the picture of Jacob and he's there on the rock. He's got his head on the rock and like an empty Chinese food carton tipped over on its side. Like he ate some old Chinese food for dinner that night. And in his dream, he saw a ladder, and a bunch of angels on it. And he woke up and there was no one to tell this great dream to. And, it's just a little off. It's just a little cool. Ladders and steps and escalators and all those kinds of things. Like, keep it to yourself, But when Jesus explains, like, even more what it means, like, to us it's helpful that he's the way. He's the bridge. He's the door. And I appreciate the commentary from Jesus there. And Bethencourt said, the stairway between earth and heaven, for instance, will be realized in the person of Jesus, who's the true gate to heaven. What Jacob sees in his vision is a foretaste of what will come in the fruition of Jesus. So isn't it great to see in the Old Testament what Jesus was talking about with the two on the road to Emmaus? These are the things that speak of me, he said. Or Hebrews says that Psalm 40 is about Jesus, where it says, behold, it is written, in the volume of the book, it speaks of me. And so even the ladder that Jacob sees in his dream is about Jesus. So, interesting too, that the Canaanite nations and other religions of that area often had people trying to build giant towers to heaven, and similar to what we know of with the Tower of Babel. And how wonderful, though, that we see that doesn't work. You can't build your way to heaven. But our God is the God that has made the way for heaven to meet earth, and for even God himself to come down and dwell among us. And if we would just receive that he's done all the work, he built the ladder, he's the bridge, we don't have to do any of the labor, we just get to rest in him, and we'll be with him. So verse 13, and behold, the Lord stood above it. So he's above the ladder, and he says, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. So Jacob just witnessed the existence of the stairway, but then he experiences God standing and being with him. And it's going to just transform Jacob's perspective, because there's going to be a promise of God always being with him. So he's going to be assured of the covenant of all of his fathers here in this story, even to the point of the land that you're lying on right now is going to be yours and your descendants. So the Lord is backing up Daddy Isaac's promise, that you're going to possess the land that you've been a stranger in. And verse 14, see if this sounds familiar at all. And your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And so just making sure it's known everywhere, in every direction, in the whole world, in the whole globe, people are going to know the Lord through you. It reminds me of when I was in the Pentecostal church growing up in middle school, and my dad was healed in a Pentecostal church, and we used to sing this song. It was a church that you had to dress up to go to. Everyone wore a tie, and it was like, you got to look good in the hood, you know what I'm saying? And there was this song, there's going to be a revival in the land. And like the chorus was, to the north, and the whole church would go, north, to the south, south, I guess it'd be that way, south, to the east and the west, there's gonna be a revival in the land. And that's why I am the way I am, because we sang that song. But just imagine, it was like 400 people in this church. They're all looking good. We got our tie on, coming in hot, busting out the revival song, You guys, you know that song? Fellow Pentecostals? Man, I have it seared into my brain, like a whole family of boys with their ties just really pointing real good, and it's biblical. Here the promise is like, hey, where you're laying down, your family is going to be spread all over the place, from the north to the south to the east and the west. And there's going to be a revival in the land, is essentially what's being said here. Next time I do worship, I'll do that song with you guys. So fourth Sunday of the month is my week to lead, and I will lead you all in that song. You better be here, okay? Take my time. It might take a few months. Oh, so don't take my time and wear my tie. I'll take that bet, Shyla Kolovas. But again, just the great missional statement that has fueled the world missions movement for 2,000 years, 4,000 years really. In you and your seed, all the nations of the world will be blessed. And I like Genesis 13, a very similar promise to Abraham, where the Lord said to Abram after Lot separated from him, lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land that you see, I give to you and your descendants forever. And I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth. And I like this little phrase, that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants also could be numbered. And then there's this great thing. So while Jacob is laying in the dust, and it's like, the dust that you're laying on is going to be yours, right? But in the same place, the same promise, Abraham was supposed to arise and walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. Then Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. So, hey, Russell, could we throw the map up again? And let's just see real quick. I'm so sorry this turned out so blurry. But so Bethel's the top dot, and then the next dot down here is Mamre. And so Mamre is just kind of adjacent to the Dead Sea down there. And that's where Hebron is. And that's where that vision took place. So get up, go on a walkabout, Abraham, and everything that you see, and Hebron kind of is elevated, you can kind of see all over. Everything you see and everything on your walkabout is going to be your land. And then what's just interesting to me as I was plotting this out on Google Earth today, Bethel is north of that. And so it just shows like even more that's the promised land, even more that's the promised land. And so I hate to break it to you all, but from the river to the sea, the land is Israel's. You know, it's promised to Israel. Doesn't mean that there can't be great saving grace towards the Palestinians and that they would come to know Jesus and be a part of the blessing. That is the Lord's heart. They're part of the nations that could be blessed here. But the promise of that land, the Lord's given it to them. And it's just repetition is the key to knowledge of that this land is Israel's. And so the promise from the Lord to Jacob goes on in verse 15, behold, I'm with you and will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I've done what I've spoken to you. So great promise that is in addition to legacy and land, and it's just the cure for the loneliness, that the Lord is going to be there. He's going to watch over Jacob. He's going to guard Jacob. It ministered right here to Jacob's sense of being desperately lonely and hopeless, that the Lord is there with us. And maybe you feel like you're just in the same place. You're kind of lonely. And let the Lord be that companion there and that watcher over you, and just minister a heart of comfort to your heart. The psalmist says in 121:5 that the Lord is your keeper, and he's the shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve you from all evil. He shall preserve your soul. The Lord shall preserve your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. And I just love that that's the promise to Jacob. Even though Jacob kind of got himself in this pickle, you know, he's lonely and he's rushing and he's running for his life because of a little plot that him and his mom had together to make sure that we secure the birthright thing. You know, that we got to make it in our own flesh. We got to make it happen. And it's been detrimental to Jacob. But even in that, the Lord is just so gracious, and I won't leave you, and I'll be with you. And it's just a good word for us here tonight. And maybe you are lonely, and maybe it's because of your own doing, you know, and just messing up. The Lord's okay with that. He's still God, and he still is merciful and gracious, and just speaks these wonderful things over us in our Jacob-type moments, that he will keep us and be with us. And he has a plan for Jacob to even return and to come back. Like, I'm going to be with you, and you're not going to die out there. You're going to go over the great desert, and I'm going to be with you, and you're going to come back. For I will not leave you until, then I'm going to leave you. No, I'm just kidding. Until you've heard what I have, or I've done what I have spoken to you. or promise to you. And, God is the one that keeps his promises. The numbers tell us that God is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he would need to repent. If he said it, he will do it. If he's spoken, will he not make it good? And so he's going to keep his promise to Jacob as he ministers to Jacob in this dream. Now, Spurgeon wrote of this moment in Jacob's life. Charles Spurgeon said, "How precious it must have seemed as it came to Jacob in that den of a place where he lay with the hedges for his curtains, the heavens for his canopy, the earth for his bed, stones for his pillow, and God for his companion. I'm with thee. Tomorrow when thou shalt open thine eyes, thou wilt look back to the west and say, I've left my father's house and my mother, Rebekah, behind me. And the tears will be in thy eyes, and thou wilt look to the east and say, I'm going to the house of my mother's kindred, and I know them not, save that I have heard concerning Uncle Laban, and that he is hard and grasping, and I know not how he will receive me. But is not that a precious thing to start upon a journey with? I am with thee, I, the ever blessed. Though thy mother is not with thee, I am with thee. And then Charles Spurgeon applied this to anyone who might be setting out on a journey. And he said, is any young friend here who is leaving home? Are you going away for the first time, and do you feel sad? Or are you about to emigrate to a distant country, and does your heart feel heavy? Do not go at all till you can get a hold of this. I am with thee. Say unto the Lord, if thy spirit go not with me, carry me not up hence. Wait till he gives the answer, my spirit shall go with thee, and I will give thee rest. So the Lord is with thee. Sometimes it's nice to speak in King James Version, isn't it? It's horrible. But A.W. Pink says about this whole story, right down to where the fugitive lay, the ladder came. And right up to God himself, the ladder reached. That's how intimate the Lord is with us, even in our time of being the runaway. So, Boyce said it, in the final analysis, when reading the account of Jacob's vision at Bethel, we should think of Jesus just as we should in the great Old Testament events. And the concluding question is this: have you seen Jesus? Have you come to know that one who alone has bridged the gap between a holy heaven and a sinful world, and who has promised to be all things to those who trust him and love him? You may be lonely as Jacob was. You may be impoverished and unemployed. You may be disgraced and dishonored. You may be fearful. Whatever you may be, I direct you to Jesus. He's the ever-present companion of the lonely. He's the wealth of the destitute, the glory of the base, the rock and the fortress of those who are afraid. He is God. So in verse 16, Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. I like just sometimes these are just real men, real people that are just like, the Lord's here, and I didn't know it. Just like, these are my people. Like it's just like, there was a rock right there, and I laid my head on it. Would never have known that God was right here. And when you go to Bethel on Google Earth, there's like a dig site right there. It's the best I could find for Bethel on Google Earth. And it's just kind of like there's an archaeology spot, and it's just like kind of a broken down, just rocky, fieldy area. I mean, it's nothing special. You probably have it back by your compost pile in your yard, And it's just where it was, and just like, the Lord's here, and I didn't know it. But you know what he also didn't know? What Jesus tells the Samaritan woman? Doesn't matter where you're at, the Lord is there. When you worship him in spirit and truth, you don't have to be as the Samaritans worshiping on Mount Gerizim or as the Jews down in Jerusalem. Just wherever you're at, just worship him in spirit and truth, and you'll be able to say, The Lord is in this place. Just as the Lord was in the place as he was in the burning bush. And Moses had to take his shoes off his feet because he was on holy ground. Or Joshua just walking around Jericho and waiting to figure out what to do with Jericho. And there's this mighty warrior there. Take your shoes off. Again, you're on holy ground. The Lord is in this place. He's in the most, unknowable areas is where the Lord is and where he's moving. But I love that phrase, though. The Lord is in this place. And I did not know it. I hope people say that about Calvary Chapel when they come in here. Because didn't we just learn that in the spiritual gifts passage, that when the prophets would speak, that people's thoughts and intents of their hearts are revealed, so that the people that come and they hear it, they hear the prophecy and they go, say what you want about that church, but the Lord is in that place. And that would be said about our church, I hope. Verse 17, another great phrase, is he channels his inner surfer. And he was afraid and he said, how awesome! Tubular. Radical. How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. And this is the gate of heaven. I mean, he is just having like a moment right here, you guys. Has not had a theological thought in his life until right now. I mean, he is like, this is really interesting, and it is just a lesson for all of us that some of the best prophets and priests and patriarchs, it's like, what were you doing in your discipleship, Dad? And he's just in a place where he's known to be a deceiver, and he's running away, and he's running, and he's just like, this is like, I seen Quantum Leap once on CBS, and there's like a portal. You guys, it's right here. It's like, dude, the portal is everywhere. But it's awesome, right? So now the word awesome, we like to use the word awesome. Some awe. I don't know if that's really what I mean. But the missions pastor at Calvary Corvallis would refuse to use the word awesome if he wasn't talking about the Lord. And so, I remember once I was like, oh man, how was your vacation, man? Was it awesome? He's like, I don't use that word except for God. I'm like, was it good? No, it was good. Like, he did teach me something that was like, oh, yeah, might be good to reserve that. I haven't done that, but it might be good to just reserve it for the things of the Lord, okay? Because actually, in the Hebrew lexicon, awesome means to be afraid, to fear God, to honor him, to find him terrible and dreaded and awesome. Like, he's so awesome, like it just sucks the breath out. The word astounded comes to my mind. We did a high school camp once, and the theme was astounded. It was all about high schoolers learning how to worship the Lord. And I remember on the brochure that I made for the camp, Camp Astounded, and I just had the definition for astounded, to be struck dumb with some sudden fear or terror. And that's where Jacob was just like, he might have had the dumb part covered, but, at least when I'm playing him. He was just, whoa, like, this is just, if you're not in the right place when you see something like this, you ought to be terrified. Now, we often quickly, and I just remembered this through Bethencourt, that we hear things like, fear the Lord, or the Lord is to be feared. And we're just really careful because we're like, are there any untrained ears around here? Like, oh, not like really fear him. Like, you don't need to be afraid. And we kind of water it down because we're kind of ashamed of God, that some people really need to be afraid of him. And we all need to be afraid of him if we're not in Jesus. And then the fear that we have, it is translated reverence, so that now that we're saved, we don't fear him like those that have the terror of the Lord upon them, but those who are reverent in awe worshiping him. It's a different type of fear. But he is awesome, and he is to be feared. And the Proverbs tell us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. You want to start having a wise life? Begin to fear the Lord. Not like fear him. Just like, you cool? We're cool. Or like, whoa, he is holy. He doesn't mess around. He doesn't wink at sin or play with sin. Like, he judges it. His wrath's upon it. It's such a big deal that he had to send his own son to die for it and to be slaughtered and slain and brutally just murdered out in cold blood out in the open. That's how he had to deal with it. He's coming back after he rose from the dead. He's going to judge the world. He's a judge, and he will judge, and he will send people to hell. And we're going to stand before him, before his judgment seat, and our behavior is going to be weighed before him. Now, his wrath won't be upon us, but I remember seeing a picture of Jace Jonas this week and Michael McKinnon, and they were both on the Bema seat at the track where they were put in the different positions on the awards stand. And what a wonderful, holy moment that is for our athletes, right? But I'll tell you what, as Christians, we're also put in the Bema seat as our actions are weighed, whether they were done for the glory of the Lord or for the good of our flesh. That's stuff to be feared, not something to trifle with. And so it is good for us to maybe have some awe with our son. Awesome. And so if you see Jesus, you'll go away saying, surely the Lord is in this place, and he is awesome, and any place we're at can be our Bethel. And so verse 18, Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone that he had put at his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. So interesting, in a few chapters, he is going to kind of rebuild this and make it into an altar. But in a couple chapters, in 31:13, the Lord says, I'm the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of the land of Laban and return to the land of your family. So I'm the God of Bethel, where you anointed that pillar with oil. Genesis 31, again in 45, so Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And then Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones, and they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there on the heap. And I was just kicking myself today because I was remembering back to our men's muster and how we learned about, we want to be men of faith, right? And I just felt the Lord was telling me at the muster that we needed to go find a spot, whether they would let us on the property or just go on the other side of the fence and erect some monuments that would be reminders of what the Lord called us to as men of faith. I was like, no, that's dumb. That's dumb. And then today I'm like, that would have been so awesome. So remind me, Ken, next muster, I think we need to make some monuments, right? Some rocks. Yeah, they don't have any up there. But no, there's lots of rocks up there. But pillars and oil are regular symbols of memorial and consecration. Jesus, the Messiah, is called the Anointed One. And so it's just a picture of God's faithfulness. Look in verse 19. There's only 22 verses, so we're almost done. And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city had been Luz previously. So the word Bethel means house of God. And just a couple verses before, Jacob, when he said how awesome the place was, this is none other than the house of God and the gate of heaven, or Bethel, house of God. And I love what Kidner said, where you are now can be the gate of heaven, can be the Bethel. Verse 20, then Jacob made a vow saying, if God will be with me and keep me in this way that I'm going and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on so that I can come back to my father's house in peace, Then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I've set as a pillar shall be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will surely give a tenth to you. So I know that as I've studied this in the past, that people have been kind of critical of Jacob's vow here, kind of like, if he saves me, then I'll follow him. If he does some good stuff for me, then he'll be my God. And you can read it that way, and I think that's how I'd always heard it. But as I was reading it today, and then I found that some commentaries also went this direction as well, where you have a guy that just experienced God big time. He is in a place of awe and reverence. And as I read it, that word if can also be translated since. And it's just kind of this, you know what? Kind of like a realization. You know what? Man, if the Lord's going to be with me, and if the Lord's going to he's got my back and he's always going to provide for me, why wouldn't I give it all to him? Why wouldn't I let him be my God? And I just found myself being kind of gracious to the vow, that it wasn't like hey, if you give me a bunch of stuff, then you can be my God. He already comes from a family of wealth. But it seems that he was in a good place of awe and reverence and making the covenant to be the Lord's, the Lord would be his, and that he would always be generous with the things that the Lord gave him. And a little bit of a principle here of a tithe is set up. And throughout, there's no law of the tithe here. We just see a principle and a practice in his life. Tithe meaning tenth. Anything the Lord gives me, just right off the top, the tenth just goes straight to the Lord. And it's a good principle for like the starting place for us as Christians, that if you aren't quite sure how to start giving to the Lord, a tithe is a good place to start. And in just a couple of weeks, we'll be in 1 Corinthians 16 on a Sunday morning, and we'll see the principle of storing up as you may prosper. So it's not necessarily a tenth, but you can kind of look at your prosperity, give to the Lord according to that. But the principle of the tithe is not like the law. If you were going to actually do like percentages based off the Old Testament, it'd probably be more like 30%. But the Christian perspective is, God has been so gracious with me, and I just want to be generous right back out. And so instead of it being, I know a lot of Christians are like, hey, 10% of what I have is the Lord's. Not all of it. All of what I have is the Lord. And the question isn't like, how much dare I give away? But rather, how much dare I keep for myself? He's been so generous with his indescribable gift. Man, I want to be so generous with my gifts as well. And so there's just a tenth there that just flowed off of his heart in his vow there. So we'll go ahead and have Jessica come on up. And a great experience that Jacob had being at the Bethel and the gateway to heaven, or the stairway to heaven. Is it Led Zeppelin? Is that Led Zeppelin, or who is it that sings Stairway to Heaven? Is it Led Zeppelin? Yeah. Or plays that song, and he had his own Led Zeppelin moment there, right? But the good principle for us is right here in this moment can be our Bethel house of God moment. And when you leave this place and you're, letting the dogs out tonight before you go to bed to go to the bathroom, and you're standing out on the porch, that can be your Bethel moment. When you lay your head on your actual down pillow tonight, that can be a Bethel moment. And when you wake up and I just came on Sunday morning, and I just felt so weak to teach and lead worship. And I just locked the doors in the green room back here. And I just got on my face before the Lord. I was just pleading for the Lord to meet me and to move in the message. And it was so long ago, I don't remember how it went. But, poor Rhonda was trying to put her purse back there, and she knock, knock. Who's in here? What's going on? And I'm like, oh, got to get up now and unlock the door, And just that little moment, probably was 30 seconds on my knees back there, was such a Bethel moment with the Lord. And we can have the Bethel moments because of the stairway, Jesus. And so I just encourage you tonight, if you've never just surrendered your life and your heart to Jesus, He's the way, He's the truth, He's the life, He's the gate, He's the door. No one comes to the Father but by Him. He's coming back. He's bringing the host of heaven with Him. You were impressed that I saw you sitting under the fig tree. You're really going to be impressed when I return with the hosts of heaven. That's really going to wow you. We look for that day. We're living in that day. So, Lord, we just come to you tonight, and so much there in this great story. There's some good humor as we just see ourselves in Jacob, and we see our mess-ups in Jacob. What one of us hasn't been deceitful or manipulative or tried to make things happen in our own strength rather than trusting in you and resting in you. We feel the consequences of those actions, and they just make us feel desperate and lost and alone and up a creek without a paddle and scared, and just the comfort of our life is just as if we're setting our head on a rock at night. It's the best we've got right now. And Lord, would you just take the rock pillow moments that we're in and transfer them into being wonderful heavenly experiences with you. We believe you, Jesus, are the stairs. And so let us have those Bethel moments, God. Let us be like the psalmist who feels like a deer that pants for the rivers of water. So thirsty, so longing for you in the Bethel moments, Lord. Lord, those of us that we're still waiting to see the promise, we still feel like sojourners in a land that had been promised to us, and we don't quite yet have the keys to the city. But Lord, let us have that good, constant faith of our fathers, of looking to the city from above whose builder and maker is God. We do look forward to that. Let's stand together and we'll just close in a song tonight. Just want to give place as we close tonight. If anybody has a word of, might be prophecy or a word of knowledge or a word of wisdom or comfort, encouragement, edification for us tonight, I want to give place for that. And maybe you could come up here and grab the mic and speak. And we're just trying to keep using those gifts of the Spirit, and then also just give place for testing that. So maybe you just were, during the sermon, there was just something that was just pressing on your heart, or as we were singing, there was something that was just pressing on your heart, and maybe now that you have just an opportunity to share it, just the Lord's like, yeah, that's what I was putting it on your heart for, so that you would share it for everybody. So we ended 3 minutes early tonight so that we could have 3 minutes of a word of prophecy. So does anybody have anything?
So I came here straight from work and was kind of rushed. Didn't know if I was going to make it in time, and luckily I made it in time. But as you can see, I'm totally filthy from work. And my wife can attest to this. If I get anything on my Bible or it gets smudged, it really, really bugs me. And while Rory was praying at the end, I smeared in my Bible from my stained hand on some of the verses we were studying tonight, and I was praying to God while Rory was praying, help me be okay with that. And it just kind of came to me that smudge on the Bible, he took a stain off of me and put it on his word, and it kind of reminded me that that's why Jesus died, was to cover our stains with his blood. So I just thought that maybe you guys could get something from that too.
Took the stains off of me and put it on himself. That's good. Anybody else? Just a word right at 8 o'clock? Do we need to pray for Karen tonight? Is she having a leg cramp or something? Or? Oh, really bad Charlie horse. We'll pray for you right now. That's not a good thing. Oh, Lord, we just pray for Karen and her leg. And just think of a couple weeks ago that she was just like, oh, man, if there was something the Lord taught me tonight, It's about faith. And we all just said, yeah, faith in Jesus. And so, Lord, that Karen would just put faith in you, and just times where her body is just hurting and broken and aching, Lord, and just know that her body's been through a lot even recently. And would you just touch her leg and just remove that Charlie horse, Lord? You know if it's dehydration or potassium need or just various things that are causing that. Just bring some comfort to her tonight, as she's got so many sweet friends just helping her, and that she would just feel loved on. Amen. All right, well, good last time being with you guys, and then a month off, and then in July we'll start up Mark in the Park. We'll keep going through the book of Mark at Castle Park and have our barbecue and things like that, and so look forward to just a different venue of feasting on the Word together, huh? So God bless you guys if you're able to stick around and help clean up tonight. You guys are always such a good crew at that, and